Welcome to Coming from Left Field, where we have conversations about politics, books, and current events with your host, Greg Godels and Pat Cummings. When President Biden took office in January, his first priority was getting COVID-19 under control. He pushed his roughly $2 trillion American Rescue Plan through Congress with only Democratic votes, putting more money towards the fight against COVID while sending additional relief to parents, unemployed workers, state and local government, schools, and small businesses. He's now been in office for 6 months. How's he doing at the end of his first semester? Let's give him a report card. Hello, Greg. How are you doing?
Good, Pat. How are you?
Welcome to our podcast. I forget what number we're on, maybe 14 or so, but I thought we'd just go back and get the band back together and just have just you and me chat today. I think that was your idea, and at your suggestion, let's look at how Biden has done in his first 6 months. It's been about 6 months since he was elected, and this is his report card. Let's give him a report card. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that.
Good. And it was my birthday yesterday. See? Coming from Left Field Podcast, I got a T-shirt
Good on you.
celebrate my 7th decade. I figure I've got like 2 good decades left, then it's pretty going to be a shit show from then on out. But
you turned 70.
I just turned 70. Yeah.
I took you for 59.
No. I'm holding up pretty well, which is good.
You
So
dyed your hair gray. That's what I thought was going on here.
hey, let's just hit a couple of themes here and just have a general discussion. And as I mentioned to my sister that we were going to be doing Biden, she's a pretty staunch Democrat. She said, "Oh, will you please be kind to him?" She didn't want us to be mean to him. So I thought we might start off with some of the good things that he did, the promises that he has kept. And when he first came into office, he had a whole series of things that he did that were good things. I'll just review some of them. Reverse the transgender ban, rejoin the World Health Organization, rescinded that Muslim ban from Trump, restored the White House directive on global health security, which Trump had also dropped out of, resumed ties with the Palestinian Authority, Paris Climate Agreement, bipartisan commission to look at Supreme Court reforms. I don't know where that will go, but gave the small businesses some stimulus money, restart package, helped with funding some of the shortfalls with the local governments associated with their difficulty with the pandemic. And he reversed separating families and putting kids in cages. So I think that's pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I compare him to Obama. I think people thought that we might be getting Obama too, but I think he's better than Obama, to be frank. I mean, his first 6 months have been more eventful. They're marginalia, if you will. I mean, there's things that you can do by the executive order. They're undoing a lot of the nastiness of Trump, not the substantial issues, but the nastiness of Trump. That's all to the good. And I'm kind of shocked by the fact that opinion polls are showing that he's below Obama's numbers. So I guess it says something about the allure, the magic that Obama commanded over people, whereas Biden is kind of a plotter. But I give him a higher grade than Obama, if that makes your sister happy. I mean, I think he's done more. He's tried to do more. He is fixated on this bipartisanship, which is either one of two things. It's either he's totally misunderstands U.S. politics and its history, or two, it's a smokescreen. It's an attempt to avoid calling the question on a number of these initiatives, which look good, but are going to go nowhere unless there's a vote taken. where there's a coalition created.
Right, right. Actually, that was one of our topics is the bipartisanship. Let's just go right to the bipartisanship. And I think this goes along with the fact that the easy wins came first. But in the one article that we have here it says bipartisanship borders on incoherence. And I think that I don't know what to think about this. The idea that he thinks that he spent a lot of capital trying to get the Republicans on board. And remember when Obama did that with the Affordable Care Act, and they played him all the way to December and then really rolled him. No one voted for it, not one vote. I'm frustrated with that, and I don't know if he still has time to correct himself. Do you think he will, or do you think he's going to be rolled like Obama was rolled?
It's a little deceptive because he understands that he doesn't have the votes in the Democratic Party in the Senate. He knows he doesn't have those votes. This is not Manchin. It's others in the right wing of the party that aren't going to go along with these programs and go along with the spending. He knows that. So he creates this bipartisan attempt to get around that so he doesn't have to face it directly. Because if you face it directly, you discipline the party the way the Republicans discipline their party. You take Manchin in the woodshed.
Right.
And you say, we're going to run somebody against you next time. But that doesn't happen in the Democratic Party. Everything defers to the right. Nothing defers to the left. If you look at our infamous squad and our elected left progressives in the Democratic Party, they have to go along with everything. Whereas the rightists in the Democratic Party can stomp their foot as they have in the past and say, we're not going to go along with this. And the whole show stops. So that's the logic that I think he's operating against. He won't come clean and say that, but that's the whole idea around bipartisanship. He's searching for some votes in a broader arena because he knows he can't discipline his own people.
So
the votes are there.
Yeah. Here's something that's interesting. NPR had an article, Biden's bipartisan infrastructure package fails a test vote in the Senate. That was for a couple of days ago. And we just had Trump come out yesterday in a speech saying any Republican that goes along with this package, with his package, is we're gonna primary you. We're gonna primary you out of the office. I've never seen anything like a former president being so actively.
It underlines the weakness of the Democratic Party as a political party because they have no problem disciplining the left. Nina Turner's running in Cleveland, and the party is putting all kind of resistance up and supporting the candidate running against her, where that never happens with the right-wing counterparts. They never discipline them. They never pull them into the center. They just defer to them. And it's a reality that the hardcore Democrats have to face. The Tea Party was a phenomenon. It scared the living hell out of mainstream Republicans. But they had principles. I mean, I didn't share their principles, but they stood by their principles and said, if we don't get our way, we're going to run against you. We're going to run candidates against you and so on. Trump's doing the same thing. So objectively, forget about whose side we're on. We're not on Trump's side. But who's showing the fortitude here? Trump or the Democrats?
Right. Well, I was listening to, of course, as I always do, listening to a Chomsky video from a week ago, and he was talking about some of the things that were, affecting us, of course, climate change and so forth. And he added this one feature that I'd never heard him speak of before, which is the dysfunctioning of governance. And he said that he believes that it's It's already showing up in how the Fed is dealing with things, because they're knowing that they're fearful that the government isn't going to be able to have fiscal policy that's effective. He says it's showing up in the Wall Street is starting to be very freaked out that this inability of these two parties to do anything is creating a unique event in itself that's problematic. If it is correct that Trump can come in and literally neuter all of these Republicans from acting, that's kind of new, isn't it? Or what do you think about that?
Not new at all.
You don't think so?
The notion of dysfunctionality is a positive one. The people that rule this country like things to be stasis. They like it to be the same. They don't want, the problem they're facing is they have a numerous crises that they're facing. And there are different approaches to those crises, and they're at loggerheads. So it's really the crises that are behind this. And we've had that in the past. We've had those situations that create these big bifurcations between the two. In a two-party system, you don't have an outlet valve. An outlet valve would be a third party. You're going to go back to the 1850s and the destruction of the Whig Party and the birth of the Republican Party. The Republican Party was the kind of outlet. It brought new sectional interests together so that the two-party system could go forward. We're in a similar situation. The two-party system is largely dysfunctional today. And I'm sorry, Mr. Chomsky he's an incredible transformational grammar theorist. That's what he did. He doesn't do history too well.
Yeah.
Doesn't do history too well at all. It's part and parcel of our history, if you know it.
Well, you're absolutely wrong for saying anything bad about Chomsky, but we've had that discussion before. You realize he's my.
I'm burned up because of his position on Cuba. He came out with a bunch of other celebrity and academic.
We'll get to foreign policy. So we've been nice to him on some promises kept. We don't know where the bipartisan's going. It could be a dysfunction of the two-party system, and it's possible that he could have some gumption to do something, but I don't think he's going to go into next winter and then get rolled like Obama did. So we'll see what will.
Let me ask you, what do you think the two parties want right now? I mean, I discount the fact that they really want anything for the American people. That's me speaking, but what do you think their goals are? The two parties.
Our two-party system is so remarkably dysfunctional that I think that the ability to govern is increasingly atrophying, and the ability of the democracy to work effectively with not only the gerrymandering but the Senate and how it's set up and the corporate influence and so forth, and the media's dysfunction. So I'm extremely pessimistic about the two-party system. Extremely.
Oh, but I've always been. I mean, I think it's a terrible system. It's not working. It's dysfunctional. But from their perspective, I mean, the Democrats want to get reelected.
Right.
They want to win the midterm election. Their game plan, it appears to me, is hold these January 6th hearings, which started today. You mentioned it earlier. Hold the hearings, draw attention to Trump. Their main card that they play is the Trump card. The Trump card. They're going to beat up on Trump from now until the election, and they think that will keep him the attention on Trump, and that'll win him the midterms. But they're not betting on any of the programs, and you only got 15 months to go. So,
yeah,
I don't see a real program for the Democrats. For the people that voted for Biden because they hate Trump, they probably give Biden an A. He won, Trump is gone, that's an A. When I surveyed some of my friends who are Democrats, for the most part, most of them gave him a C- to a C+, put him right in the middle. He hasn't done a lot, he's promised a lot, but nothing has really been produced of any major importance. If I would grade him in terms of the problems we face, I'd have to give him a D. I mean, he's not addressing the incredible, unparalleled drop in life expectancy after the COVID. There hasn't been that kind of a drop since the influenza crisis right after World War One. This month against this quarter against last quarter, earnings, wages dropped. 1 out of 5 bankruptcies now are medically induced bankruptcies. The healthcare system is in shambles. The average black male now lives to be 68 years old. He lost 3 years in life expectancy in the last year and a half, and so on. I mean, if you take the measuring sticks of how well we are doing, they're bleak. And now we have a commission not studying those numbers and those figures and those facts. The 30% increase in drug overdoses in 2020. 30% hasn't been one in 3 decades.
Okay, well, let's get to his final grade. I mean, you're basically describing things being kind of a freak show, which is true. But to what degree is he responsible for this? Is he just on the train that's left the station? And I will give the final grade later. I want to change the subject here. This is something that I'm interested in, and I added this, and it is called cognitive decline. So I want to set this up with a video. So just hang on a second. Let me see if I can get this video going.
It's underway, just like the other question that's illogical. And I've heard you speak about it because you always, I'm not being solicitous, but you're always straight up about what you're doing. Yeah. And the question is whether or not we should be in a position where you are, why can't the experts say, we know that this virus is in fact, it's going to be, or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved, but permanently approved. Yeah. That's underway too. I expect that to occur quickly.
Well, that means, you mean for the FDA?
For the FDA. Yeah.
So
the Federal Drug Administration.
That's kind of hard to watch, isn't it?
It is.
And I don't think that is a function of early childhood disfluency. To me, the lack of train of thought and the ability to kind of track, it's not typical Joe gaff. I'm not so sure that's something new. What are your thoughts about that?
I defer to you on the psychological analysis. I know you know your stuff, and it's alarming that you see that. I'd rather not see that, to be frank. But I must say that Reagan wasn't much better. What Reagan could do, though, is keep to the script because he was an actor. He was a bona fide actor.
Right.
Schwarzenegger is a similar bona fide actor. He knows how to read his lines. Joe's improvising. Put him in front of a teleprompter. He's not too bad, but outside of that, he's not so good. And the difference, of course, is Reagan would stay away from those situations. But I think Reagan was probably just as dysfunctional. My own personal view.
Oh, I think he was much. With the history books say he was very dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Towards the end there.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the old debates of him with Paul Ryan, and he could take names, and he was very quick and verbally fluent. I think the reason I'm saying this is, you know, the question is, we've got Kamala Harris in the wings, and I think, I don't know what your thoughts are about her. I think she's a horrible candidate. You know, when you really track what she says,
yeah.
And I'm not so sure she's going to be.
She's a common fish in the Democratic Party, all political parties, and that is she's an opportunist.
Right.
Her whole life has been opportunistic. She's jumped and leaped at opportunities when they arose, and she's not above stepping over people. And she moved faster than her command of issues. So she was always saying things and doing things that she thought she had the ears of the populace. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. She just says what she thinks will get her over. So, right. But I think you got to look at the administration beyond the two characters. They're really an Obama administration. It kind of says where those Obamaites have morphed, how they evolved. And what Trumpism has done, Trumpism has left a stamp on U.S. politics. Much of it's horrible and much of it's correctable. Much of it is accepted. For example, in terms of trade, pretty much the Democrats now are not the zealots for globalization that they used to be. Events have changed that. The use of sanctions and tariffs, which were verboten before in the age of globalization, now both political parties endorse that. So there's been a transformation in the thinking of the leaders in both political parties. Both are, as the Wall Street Journal on the weekend pointed out with their article about corporate America, kind of lost its way. They're orphans politically. They don't know which party to support. Part of that is because both parties now have a populism embedded in them, whether it's Howley or Marco Rubio. They quote a Marco Rubio statement about corporations in the financial sector that you'd expect to come from the mouth of Karl Marx.
Right.
And you know it's not sincere. You know it's just gameplay. But both political parties have that populist element, and it's kind of throwing everybody off. It's a corrective for all these ugly things that have risen that are affecting America: the unemployment, the poverty, the debt, the personal debt, the despair.
Yeah.
And so we have this populist element in both parties appealing to just that.
Well, you have, back to the cognitive decline, you had Fox News and all of the other conservative outlets just making that the story of the day, all the time.
Yeah.
And you had the other outlets refusing to cover it whatsoever. But I'm not so sure that's not going to creep into the public discussion a little more.
Well, they object. It's an easy thing for the media. It's an easy thing to make it all about Trump, all about Biden and Biden's personality or dysfunction. Smart people, intelligent people, educated people, I hope, can look beyond that and see what the real issues are and what's really motivating these political parties and organizations.
Okay, Greg, let's go to another one. Let's go to COVID.
Yeah.
And we had as his campaign promise increase COVID testing, which was a promise kept. He's doubled that, and that's readily available. 100 million COVID-19 vaccine shots for 50 million people in 100 days. That was also a promise kept. So he's done a fairly good job with some of those promises. But here was one of his promises here, and I don't know if how much is this his fault, but get COVID-19 under control. And that's definitely not a promise kept. It's not a promise failed. It's in the works. I don't know if he or many people knew the vaccine hesitancy that we would be facing and how that resulted in a very predictable evolutionary altercation of the COVID virus, which has got us in kind of we're in a mess with that. Where do you think that's going?
Much of what COVID is about is beyond anybody's control. I mean, it wasn't like, I got very impatient with people that blamed it all on Trump, and I get very impatient with people that give all the credit to Biden or give all the blame today for what's going on, because I think he said that he expected 75% of the people to be vaccinated by July 1st, and of course it's less than 60% at this time. I mean, both vaccinations. I can't fault him for that. But what I think I can fault, and what I think is lost in all this, is a dysfunctional public health system, healthcare system. And that's what the politicians and the media is not talking about.
Right. Why is this working in England, where people literally trust the system, and here they
in the midst of this, people were dying because they didn't have beds. They didn't have beds because they were operating the healthcare system like it was a private business. It was a privatized system. It was just-in-time inventory. So you didn't need a lot of beds. We knew how many beds we used. There was never an excess like there would be in a public system anticipating a crisis. Why? Because it's not profitable. It's wasteful. It's not cost-effective. And all that has been shoved aside to talk about what he did and what he didn't do. I think he's done rather well with COVID, but I don't think he can do much with it. I think, we missed an opportunity. If we could have got, I think they were saying 70% of people vaccinated or had COVID by the time this variant came out, we would have had herd immunity. Now it's going to take 95% or something to achieve that.
Well,
But can you blame a president for that? I don't think so, Trump or Biden.
well, I think he might. Let's keep talking about that. I want to show one more thing here. This is Texas has seen nearly 9,000 COVID-19 deaths since February. All but 43 were unvaccinated people. And this was just from a few days ago, 5 days ago. So what did we have happen just yesterday or today? Wasn't it today? The VA is now saying you're all going to be vaccinated. The Alabama governor, who's a conservative Republican, came out with a strong statement saying, hey, I at a certain point in time, you have to blame other people. It seems like almost in the past just day or two, there is this realization that this American individual don't
Yeah, that's what it is.
you just leave me alone. Don't force me to do this, is now shifting to where people are saying, wait a second, you're screwing up the economy, my life, my income, your strong-headed denial is creating a problem. And I'm not so sure the worm isn't going to turn here with Biden. I'm not so sure you're not going to have more of these mandates through. I'd expect the military, the whole military. He could do that in a signature today.
I don't have an answer to this. I'm going to ask you, but my recollection was when the polio vaccine came out when I was a kid, nobody asked me. I just got in line in the gymnasium with everybody else, and boom, 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 we were popped on it. And it seemed to work at a time when America was under in a orgy of freedom, 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 but yet people went along with it. I think we've had far, far too much of this cultural individualism and cultural macho and cultural America #1, and we're the city on the hill. All the things that have been part of our legacy, they've reared up again in the last 30, 40 years. I'd go back to Reagan. Let's make America great again. It's been a constant theme since those ugly days of Watergate, losing the war in Vietnam, stagflation. People forget, because they don't look at history, how the world was turned upside down in the United States in that period. People were very, very scared and nervous. Things weren't going the way they were supposed to go. From that period on, it was a rebuilding of that American individualism. Reagan really pushed it hard. Clinton did a lot for it too. It's been bipartisan. And so now we're left with a situation where people think they're John Wayne. I don't want your stinking vaccine. I don't need your stinking vaccine. You don't tell me what to do.
I see it a little bit differently. Well, obviously that's part of it. And then you've got, they say like 15% of the people are anti-vaxxers, and they think that microchips are going to be put in their, they're going to be tracked by Bill Gates. And I mean, you can't do anything with those people. I mean, I'm not sure. That's like trying to talk reason to a Scientologist. They're not going to be, it's not going to work very well.
How about talking reason to a Catholic or a Protestant or a Muslim or whatever?
Right. I mean, I think the media has missed the boat with this vaccine hesitancy. They spend too much time with the statistic that 20% of Republicans say, I'm definitely not going to get the vaccine, 1 out of 5, where it's 4% of Democrats. But who are the people? So they want to make it a political thing. They want to say that the 3 million people that watch Fox News are being completely manipulated to vaccine hesitancy when it's 100 million people that don't have the vaccine. So who are the people that are not getting vaccinated? They live in Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Louisiana. And if you strip away the ethnicity, and if you strip away the political affiliation, they tend to be poor. And they tend to be this large population of people that have absolutely been screwed by our economy. Their jobs have gone away. That's who has the Trump sign up. The Trump sign didn't come because of Trump. The Trump sign became because there were a whole series of events that created Trump. And, you know, sure, they are hesitant at the government helping because have they ever in their life seen the government help them?
Right.
Nothing.
Well,
So
well said, Pat. I'm enjoying this. Go for it.
You know, it's
Go ahead.
not a political thing as much as it is a distribution of the population where you cut the herd that has been screwed, and put them in a pen and just let them go, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to really address that. You know, maybe media.
It's not so different than crime. Historically, not taking it away from this point, but they do the same thing with crime. They say, well, crime. And the fact of the matter is, crime is identified largely with poor people. Why is that? Because poor people have a disposition to commit crime, or is it because of the social setting they find, economic setting they find themselves in?
Because they're super predators. Don't you know that? They're super predators.
Exactly. That's what people want to say. But I mean, you hit the nail right on the head in terms of what's going on, because that, from what I've read, that is the demographics of the people that are not vaccinated. And someone should pause for a minute instead of beating up on them or saying they're ignorant or whatever, and say, well, what are the conditions?
Right.
And
right.
why are they skeptical?
And I hope that Biden can see that and not politicize this as a red state, blue state, and see it as a feature of despair. You know, like you were saying, what did you say? The rates of black males down to
68.1 in one particular. It was the preliminary CDCP release was down to 3-year drop, 3.7-year drop down to 68.1, I think it was. The average African American male in 2020 lived to be 68.1. So he collected maybe a year or two of Social Security and Medicare and paid into it, got nothing out of it.
Well, that speaks to the COVID thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. What about immigration? Let's go back to
Okay,
immigration.
let's get into border crisis and immigration. Let me see what I've got here. Mexican border with U.S. Desperation as immigration traffic piles up. That's a New York Times article from a few days ago. A border unprecedented 20-year high that they are more than 188,000 arrests, more than 1 million arrests to date. The border is not getting better; it's getting worse.
Yeah. So can we say this? Can we say that the idea of building a wall was vulgar, was backward, was almost feudal in nature, showed just how ignorant Trump was? But Biden has no answer. So we have a problem.
His answer is to send them back to Mexico, and they're piling up on the border in these inhumane conditions that are beyond.
The answer is, why are they coming here? Why do they want to come here? And what needs to change so that they will want to come here? They won't feel compelled to come here, and the number doesn't continue to increase. I mean,
Politico had an interesting article in June 19th that said it's not a border crisis, it's a climate crisis.
Explain that to me. I saw you had that. I didn't read that. I saw you had that in your notes.
He said that they basically saying that the climate change is literally destroying the agricultural foundation in these countries.
Who said this?
Politico.
Who's the writer?
I'd have to open it up.
That's all right. I don't need to know because
Anyway, the point.
NAFTA destroyed Mexican agriculture. That's the reality of it. Climate change didn't destroy Mexican agriculture.
Well, contributed to it.
How so?
Well, because they're starving to death. They don't have any ability to have
Why are no people leaving Nicaragua? When
I
you
don't,
look
is
at the
that a trick
demographic
question?
of who's coming across, they're not coming from Nicaragua. They
Yeah.
are coming from Honduras, a place that we overthrew their president. Hillary overthrew their president.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it's a climate. I mean, that's a easy gimmick, but the climate crisis affects everybody everywhere. Canadians aren't flowing across the border because
Right.
of the crisis.
So let's go to a foreign policy a little bit. I don't know. I don't think it's very good.
It's
You know,
horrible.
we sent bombers into the Venezuela airspace just 2 days ago, and that's provocative. You know, there's probably going to be a response to that. We have a note here: the humanitarian impact of the sanctions in Venezuela. You know, Venezuela used to be a thriving country where a good percentage of their money went to social spending, and we are literally destroying that country with sanctions and then provoking them with military posturing. You know, the article in Human Rights Pulse indicated over 50% of food consumption has been impacted by the sanctions. Their water system have been impacted. Their education system has been destroyed by it. The people with cancer treatments, people with heart, you know, the transplants, all of that are literally not occurring because of the sanctions. You know, and this is kind of stealth. I don't know. There's no difference in what Bush did, Obama did, Trump did, and Biden's doing with that. I mean, can you see any difference at all?
Oh, really, no. No, people thought actually that there's a difference in the Cuba policy with Obama. To his credit, uh, it was meant to destabilize, but it was the carrot, not the stick. The idea was let them have a taste of American capitalism, let them have a taste of the good life, and they'll change their system. But people that thought Biden was going to do that were wrong. Biden is just continuing the harshest of the Trump um, sanctions and more, and piled some on last week. And he's doing that around the world. He's doing it everywhere.
Iraq or
Uh,
Iran, increased
there's a
sanctions
lot of
there.
talk, on a lot of lists. Oh, well, he's started up some conversations with Iran. Well, Iran needs to have the sanctions removed in order for them to have the space to make a deal. They're not going to make a space. If they don't have the space, they're not going to make a deal. There's no deal. There's no reason to. And then why would people think that a hardliner got elected in Iran? The people are saying, look, this isn't working. We've got the nice guy in, and it's not getting us any kind of a rapprochement with the West. And so, the heck with them.
Bomb in Somalia 2 days ago.
We're
Bomb in,
baiting China. We're baiting China all the time. I mean, the things that they said when they had that meeting was in Alaska. They had that brief meeting, and our Secretary of State walked in. So, what about your human rights abuses? That's the way you open up a meeting with a diplomatic meeting. But that's what's going on. It's really ugly. Um, I think there's a general sense, and I'll use my term, the ruling class has a general sense in this country that the growth of China, things are slipping away from us. The power and economic might of China, the whatever it's called, this road initiative that they have, is taking away our power throughout the world. They're spending money, they're loaning money, they're building infrastructure in different places. We're losing the initiative. And so this is the response, is this belligerence. And he's tried to get all the European countries to side with him on the anti-China stuff and the anti-Russia stuff, less so actually. I was surprised that Biden talked to Merkel or Merkel talked to Biden and they agreed to finish up this Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which the real right wingers in Europe were all opposed to. The anti-Russians were all opposed to. So, I mean, that's one thing in foreign policy he's done that's probably a positive. Also, he's leaving Afghanistan, but Trump had a team that was negotiating with the Taliban to make this, and they're just leaving.
Right.
I'm not going to object to it. I mean, I want him out, but it seems to me it's like really walking away from 20 years of a story that you created.
Right.
What do you think?
I'm increasingly frustrated when I read these detailed articles about what these sanctions actually do and how draconian they are, and it just plummets all of these civilians into this horrible, horrible poverty and disease. And, it reminds me of how Cavalier Madeleine Albright said when they said there were up to 500,000 children that died because of the Iraq war and the sanctions. And she just said, well, that's the price you pay. It's just like, what?
It's the price you pay for liberty and freedom and the American way and all.
It just so I'm gonna definitely give him an F on that. I see no deviation whatsoever from.
I'll give him a C because it's a continuation, C minus because it's a continuation and slight worsening of the past. So
you're giving him some extra credit for all of the stuff he inherited. Then,
all right,
let's go to let's go to the economy, and let's look at this article here from 2 days ago. Biden says high inflation is temporary. Economists aren't so sure. We obviously, with the economy, you've got the pandemic and foreign trade, but the inflation is something that is the real boogeyman, the real Freddy 3 that just won't die. Initially the inflation was in used cars, in anything that related to chip production, washing machines, things like that. Actually, the auto industry was completely throttled by Trump's sanctions against China, which had all of the chips, and you just can't build a car without these chips. So you have that. Lumber, of course, the lumber prices are extremely high. It's $8 for a 2x4 and so forth. So
housing, don't forget housing. That's a big one.
Right. So they're touting this as, okay, when you're coming out of a pandemic, obviously you're going to have these areas that are supply driven and prices are going to be going up, gas and so forth. However, I was talking to a friend at a party the other day. He's a very good financial advisor. I really trust his opinion. And I mentioned I was doing the podcast and I wanted his opinion about inflation. And he said, inflation is 75% psychology, 25% fiscal policy. That once you create this feeling that, inflation's here, people then start changing all of their buying behaviors, and it has there's a human psychological element to inflation that's hard to gauge and hard to control. And he's a little pessimistic because he says that that's going to be taking place, but it's going to be fueled by the Republicans that are just going to sit on the sideline and make this a histrionic boogeyman, because that's going to help them get elected. They're going to do everything possible to say this socialist Democrat is spending, and this is what you get, and we get the inflation. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, he's the psychological factor is big in inflation historically. I mean, it steamrolls because once you have cost of living escalators for labor to catch up because they're falling. The latest figures for the second quarter wages were down 1.2% against the same quarter a year ago. So obviously, if you had trade unions that were effective, you'd be bargaining to get a cost of living, and that in turn would create price increases and so on and so forth. So it can have that effect, but fundamentally, they overshot. I mean, they put more money into the economy than they probably should have. So will it go away? Will it be absorbed? I don't know.
Yeah.
Will it have a backlash? Will they turn the spigot down, and then we have a recession? I mean, who knows? The problem is it's an imbalance. I mean, that's what we can say. It's certainly an imbalance. Is it more than an imbalance? You can't say at this stage, but it certainly is disruptive, and it's certainly going to have some ripples. Price increases are on the floor, so we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it was housing.
You know, you look at something like UPS. I was shocked to see the median income at UPS dropped in 2020 from $74,395 to $44,254. They didn't cut everybody's wages back. They just hired a whole slew of people at very, very low wages as part-timers, as temps, and so on. Well, they don't want to retreat from that, though. I mean, that's something they don't want to retreat from. They made a shitload of money by doing that. And most of the financial newspapers, the Journal, Bloomberg, all the rest, they're saying, you know, it looks like a lot of these jobs are not going to come back. There's no reason to come back because they got the current workforce content to work at a higher, more intense level to produce the same amount, to service the same economy, parts of the economy and so forth. So we have enormous imbalances here, and they haven't settled out yet. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I've been reluctant to go out on any limb and say this is what's ahead because I don't know. I mean, there are imbalances. Imbalances can come back into balance, or they can go further out of balance, and we have to watch.
You know, the child tax credit, that's a huge thing, and there's a lot of kids being taken out of poverty, and you know, you could say, well, that has inflationary features to it, but it also has some good features to it, you know, both quality of life. And so I know enough about my lack of economics that to say I don't know for sure, but it's something to be. I'm just worried how it's going to be used as a catalyst for
that's. I'm glad you brought that up, Pat, because that's a different question. That's not what's really going on.
Right.
It's a question of how it's going to be used politically. And you touched on it earlier, where the Republicans are always debt skulls. They're always saying pull the reins back because they don't want social programs. That's their cover to destroy social programs and keep them in balance. But a section of the Democratic Party thinks the same way. So they're going to use this inflation scare, whether it's real or imagined, to cut back on spending, particularly social spending. No question that will happen.
Okay, let's go on to my pet peeve, being an Air Force brat, is the defense budget. Political article from, again, just 2 days ago. Senate Democrats defied Biden in their vote to boost Pentagon spending, and it wasn't even close. So this is the Senate Armed Forces Committee, and they voted 25-1 to not only approve Biden's defense budget, which he said, I want 715 billion. They said, oh, well, we'll give you 740 billion. And you had one Democrat, Elizabeth Warren, say no. And this is what did Trump do? Trump increased it 10%. And I'm wondering what is our threat? I mean, the Russia has got the economy of Texas. It's other than the fact that they have nukes, they certainly don't have any real military features that are problematic. You know, and this is what sold as a red baiting China thing, or
yeah, it kind of is. You kind of know kind of know what's going on when they change names. Back in the late 40s after World War II, they changed the name of the Department of War. You had a military that was like dysfunctional here. You had maybe 30,000 GIs before World War II, marching around Pearl Harbor and various places. And you had a small Navy and a tiny Air Force. And they called it the Department of War. When there was no war in sight, nobody was going to waging war and no warnings of war. Then when we became a superpower, we changed it to the Department of Defense. So I think we've been a Department of War since the late 40s.
Yeah.
And so it's not about what the threat is. We create the threats. We invent them. We created it with Islam. We created it with communism. We're creating it with China and Russia. On and on, weapons of mass destruction. We have an infinite ability to create threats, but they're not real threats. They just justify having a Department of War. And we have the biggest Department of War in the world. Let's call it what it is. It's a Department of War.
Well, I understand Joe Inhofe, and where is he from, Oklahoma or something, supporting this, but all of the Democrats, all of it, and not even questioning it. And then you get to the largest defense contractors. So we have Honeywell, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics are the top 5. And I looked at these, and these are huge market capital as far as these companies. But I looked at their stock market trends of all these, and it's just like this. It's just going straight up. So the Defense Department is just a government transfer, welfare transfer to these programs spread out all over the country. And it's not even, we don't even discuss it. I mean, we'll fall all over ourselves talking about critical race theory. I don't think I heard any shows on this. Did you?
No. It's good analogy. Exactly. Everybody's babbling on about critical race theory and no one has a clue to what it means. And yet on the military budget, not good. Nobody has the to speak up on it.
And in this article, they mentioned the F-35 fighter, which a fighter jet that's too pricey to fail. The F-35 is this remarkable jet that has been so problematic. People are dying test flying it. Pilots black out because of the G-force. Parts failed. Shooting the gun can crack the plane. And these are not minor things. They are things that have been with this plane's program from the beginning. And rather than just pulling the damn plug on the thing, they just keep putting more and more and more money into it. It's a rat hole for taxpayer money. It's just a rat hole. And
well, it's obviously we just like to disarm, but that's not going to happen. So you need some processes to be initiated that'll pull us back from the brink. Some negotiated treaties like we had with the Soviets, which Trump threw out the window. Trump threw most of them out the window. But Biden hasn't brought them back. One of them he didn't go further with. But you've got to turn it around through these treaties because the Russians have Su-57, which was their response to the boondoggle F-35. Now they have a new fighter that they're putting out. It's like an F-22. They want to sell that internationally, so they're escalating the arms race. They have hyper rockets or hyper cruise missiles that go 5-8 times the speed of sound. So we're now having to develop similar weapons because we don't have anything like that. And it just goes on and on and on. But it's accelerated in the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Oh, yeah. Look at
Russia and China an enemy out of whole cloth.
Yeah,
and
just
so
go to Yahoo Finance and just look at the charts of their stocks. It's Okay, so my blood pressure is up. So let's do a couple more topics. We probably should have done this in the first when we began this, but we mentioned the America's optimism with the country and where, how optimistic are you? And in the last month, it's dropped 20%, just a precipitous drop since May. And it looks like that Biden has reasonable approval rates, although they're starting to drift down a little bit. He still is, what, 55%, something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he has lost the capital of the public's goodwill for a honeymoon. But how optimistic are you about the country?
Well, I've been reading a lot of history and watching a lot of history, and I liken it to the pre-Civil War era. I'm not projecting a civil war, but I'm saying that the parties are in crisis. The economy is shaky. Our relations with foreign powers is difficult, tenuous, on the edge. I'm not very optimistic, frankly, and but leaves me most pessimistic is the fact that we don't have a outlet. We have the two parties, and the two parties cannot answer any of this and will not answer any of this. So I'd always hoped that by now we'd have an emerging third party that would challenge or break the stranglehold the two parties have, and that would offer a way out. As those historically, as a third party emerges and it grows, gets momentum. We started this with the Populist Party. When you have that happening, one of the two parties will adapt or adopt those programs and move in that direction. So you get populism light in the Democratic Party, but you get something. But there's nothing here to change the momentum or inertia of the two parties. The lack of momentum, the inertia. So I'm extremely pessimistic because I don't see, those people that have invested in AOC and the Squad and Bernie.
They've been neutered. Bernie's been neutered. AOC's been neutered. Look what they did to Kucinich. Look what they did to Ralph Nader. Look what they did. Any threat to the two-party system is met with wholesale condemnation. How the Democratic Party rallied around to destroy Bernie. AOC's not. She's shut up, right?
She's an ATM. I don't call her AOC. I call her ATM. I get a note every day to raise funds, and she's raising funds for people like Connor Lamb, who's this right-wing quasi-Republican in my where I live. So what do you make of that? What can you make of that?
Why?
Back to you. How do you feel? Are you optimistic, pessimistic?
I'm very pessimistic. I'm on a bench with a cane yelling at skateboarders as they're going by. Why? How did we get Biden? We got him by, who was the guy that was the South Carolina? Clyburn. So Clyburn is this kingmaker that at the right time with the right momentum comes forth and he's falling all over himself about what a John Lewis he is, and he met his wife in prison, and I'm a civil rights leader and so forth. Let's see, isn't he like one of the top people with pharmaceutical industry?
Oh yeah, yes.
He's a corporate Democrat, completely funded by these, this kind of Clinton corporate, we're going to go after the corporate money. We're going to throw the union under the bus. And that's who he is. That's what elected Biden. And that's his master. That's how I see it. So until somebody starts to break that up, it's just going to be same old. And anyway, I'm about ready to start day drinking. We
would invite somebody from
noon here. I'm going to start day drinking now. So
no, I've started that a long time ago. But we would invite somebody from the People's Party, this new political party, to come on the podcast. That might be interesting. There's a guy named Nick Brano, who's one of the, I don't know if it would be important to him, but probably in building the party, he might consider it. But he's like a leader in the People's Party. And I see this politician that ran against Manchin, the Democratic primary. She just threw in with the People's Party. I don't know if you saw that. I'll send you the information. We might have a Green Party representative on sometime and see what they have to say.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's wrap up by one of my favorite things that I like to bitch and moan about, and that's the media. Let's look at what Axios said. This is July 25th, a couple of days ago. Media trust hits new low. 58% think that, quote, most news organizations are more concerned with supporting an ideology or a political position than informing the public. So let's look at what we're talking about here. CNN recently had an article, had a story on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' PAC is selling, quote, don't Fauci my Florida merch. That was a segment. And then they had John Bolton on, and they had him on so he could call Trump a fascist. And then MSNBC, of course, they had the article on the Florida governors, the don't Fauci my thing. They did that. They had a debate on about Latinx and how legitimate is Latinx. And they also had on something about a white privilege card that was found on somebody that was the FBI arrested as a would-be bomber, which is another story. Okay, Fox News. Oh, they had the DeSantis PAC selling Don't Fauci My Florida. They had a full segment on that. They had another segment of a teacher on how horrible and dangerous critical race theory is, which is like half their coverage anymore.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Tucker had someone on mocking the emoji about a pregnant man emoji, some sort of thing. And then, of course, they had a segment on AOC selling Tax the Rich t-shirts.
Yeah.
So that, and now we've got the Capitol inquiry into the Capitol thing. And, maybe that needs to occur, but it goes back to our article about what they're saying, that 58% think news organizations are more interested in supporting an ideology. So not one major cable network covered the coal miners are on strike in Alabama for the first time in 4 decades, but cable news is silent. This is from the June 18th. It's a Media Matters for America. Down in Alabama, they have a huge strike. It's been going on for quite some time, several months. People are being run over in their cars. There is an enormous amount of corporate money coming into this situation, trying to break the strike, following these people, the old Pinkerton kind of things. And not one single mention of 11,000 miners on strike in Alabama. So, holy cow. And before we talk about this, I want to add one more thing, and that is, I think I don't know if you saw that video of the shoplifter in San Francisco.
I didn't see it.
All right, I'll show it to you. The shoplifter comes in on his bike, steals things, The security guard has his camera out and is filming him. Later on, actually, this guy got arrested. It was on 309 different major media events, covered that particular incident, covered that. What did they not cover? They didn't cover the class act store. They didn't cover the class action lawsuit for $4.5 million against Walgreens for a pattern and history of them milking and screwing their employees. Finally, they had a lawsuit where they got caught and had to pay back some of this money. It included a multi-year struggle of them having all of the security before and after they was on their time, having them round down all of their hours rather than rounding up.
Yeah.
And it's just this pattern of behavior from a big corporate behemoth that took $4.5 million from their employees with these behaviors and actions. You didn't know about that. I didn't know about that until I saw it on one of my podcast segments. And I watched the guy on the bicycle. And
Barbara Boxer just got smacked in the face or something. That's the big news today on Google feed in Oakland or in Berkeley or somewhere on the West Coast. So that's part of the theme about criminality in San Francisco being wild and crazy. And the reality is murder rates are up in a number of cities.
Oh yeah, no, they are up.
Violence, I mean, they're still way below what they were in the 70s, way below, not even close. But violence in general, or criminality in general, is somewhat down. So no one takes the time to try to say, well, why is this? What's the cause of it? What could it be? It's never analyzed. It's just thrown in your face as well. We need the police. We need more money for the police, and so on and so forth. It's sensationalism, Pat. I mean, that's what makes it run. They're not news anymore. They're entertainment. Doesn't that explain it? I mean, they're entertainment. They're not news anymore. News doesn't exist in America on the monopoly level, monopoly media level.
Well, unfortunately, I think this ties into Biden's report card. I don't know how, when the media is this far off, and as I was preparing for this, I did a lot of Google searches of Biden's 6 months report card. It's just nothing but these mainstream large groups. None of these smaller news organizations.
Well, we're in one of those momentary or one of those periodic times of the toad when things are really bad and we don't see any way out of this. I guess we, like an alcoholic, we have to hit bottom before we'll turn around and start making appropriate changes.
Yeah.
Not there yet, and this sense of relief that a lot of liberals have because Trump is gone, I think it's almost criminal because it neglects the depth of the crisis that we're in.
Right.
The pain that people are suffering. I mean, when you have a kind of personal debt that's piling up and debt created by the healthcare system, for example, it's stunning. We're talking about millions of people. And we can either just ignore it, forget about it, like we forget about the people being bombed by our bombers and our cruise missiles and our
or destroyed by our sanctions.
Yeah. We can ignore it like that, or we can pay attention to it. So I would grade him, in terms of my expectations, I'd say he's a C+. I'm a little surprised that he's done a few things that I didn't expect him to do. In terms of our needs, I'd give him an F. I mean, what we need is something far, far more radical, more bold, and more willing to fight for than he's offering.
Well, I can't believe this. Last night at my birthday party, where in celebration we threw a watermelon off a second-story building just for giggles.
You never grew up, did you?
No. Yeah. And anyway, I gave him a C. I can't believe you gave him a C+. I actually graded Biden lower than you. That's
What I expected. He's C plus what I expected.
yeah.
Let's not get carried away. He's an F in terms of what we need.
Hey, one more thing. What do you think of our podcast? We've been doing this for 6 months.
I think we've had some very, very good guests on. I think we've got better at it. I think we have to reach more people.
Right.
We knew how to do that. But
I'm looking at our I'm looking at some of our numbers, and it looks like that it was the Beachhead was our number one show. And I'm only looking at YouTube numbers here, which doesn't count for all of the other podcasts, the Apple TV and so forth. But and I thought he was a wonderful guest. I didn't realize how Steve Gowan, how remarkably prolific a blogger and writer he was. But he was a real treat. He was very, very knowledgeable, and I'm glad you introduced me to him. Our lowest viewed podcast was where we discussed Karl Marx. People weren't interested in that as much, and we've done fairly well with our things such as Exterminate All the Brutes. Got through 138 hits. So I think we've had some good people on. It's been really a treat. The poetry reading was wonderful. I would do that again.
yeah, I think there's two sides to it. One is the people we have on have their sets of friends, and they tell people about it, and that helps promote our podcast. And then in the case of Gowan's, just between you and I, I think we really helped put him in front of people.
Right.
We've been posting his stuff on MLT. We had a Zoom meeting with him. We had a Pale Forum with him, and I think it really boosted his profile in a small way. But I mean, now he's more prolific, more known, and my friends love him too. I mean, my friends that were exposed through Pale and through our podcast, they can't get enough Steve Gowans.
Yeah.
But it says something about someone that smart, that much of a contribution, that good of a speaker, that he was a virtual unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, he should be on every talk show.
Right. And talk about prolific, a book a year. Just, oh boy. Yeah, he's quite something. So anyway, I've enjoyed this. I think we need to get a little bit better at it. And I like the idea that we can just do whatever the hell we want. We can pick a topic, and the part of the fun for me is it's not the podcast, it's all of the preparation for the podcast. For example, the one we did with Jeffrey Fox that actually got pretty good hits too on the Paris Commune. I mean, I read Marx's book on his short book on the Paris Commune in France, and I read the kind of definitive history of it, Yale, Merriman's book, and read some of Jeffrey's works. So part of the fun for me is not just the podcast, is just to be thinking about these topics and learning from them. And you've helped me a lot with that too, Greg. You've been I'm appreciative of all of the obscure articles and blogs that you send me that I don't seem to find popping up on Google searches, and those fill out some of my thoughts, and that's been a joy too. So
that's been fun. It really has, Pat. I'm glad we're doing it.
Okay, let's call it quits. We'll see you.
All right, see ya.
All right, bye now.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.